All right. Look at us. Back on Monday, July 1st, 2024. Can you believe? Holy moly, can you believe it's Monday, July
I can't,
1st, 2024?
I can't believe half the year has flown by.
You want to know something really interesting?
Sure.
It has been almost 1 year since we started the podcast.
Really?
Yes, I was going out to extend the virtual event that we have to add add more dates to it, and it said you're at the maximum 52, and I was like, wait a
Wow.
minute, 52 is all I'm allowed to add, one a week, and there we are at that maximum cap. So if you're with us, look in the pinned comment, and you'll see the link to the next series, year two. I guess we're gonna call it year two, volume two,
Wow.
whatever it is. And
Wow.
we're about to start year two. So I think next podcast will officially be the 1 year mark. There's a lot of things happening today. Before we dive in, though, let's give a special thanks to our top sponsors. We want to say thank you to Arete for being our title sponsor and FPEA for being one of our top sponsors for the entire past year. And we thank Fisher Precious Metals for coming on to make all of these things possible. There's a lot of work that goes into the everyday background of what it is that we do, constant meetings and calls and relationship building and then advocating. And it isn't just legislative session that we do work on. So, I mean, legislative session is important. It happens, it comes and goes, and it sets the tone for a lot of the rest of it. But it's not all that we do. And so there's so much that happens behind the scenes, and we're so thankful to have our sponsors with us. So shout out to them. All right. Here we are. It's Monday. How are you, Brenda?
I'm doing pretty good. Finally back in Tallahassee. I know
Hey.
y'all have been doing a lot of travel for
Mm-hmm.
meeting the homeschoolers out in the state.
Yep.
We
We
appreciate
have.
that. I
We were in.
appreciate y'all doing it because I used to do it all by myself.
Yeah. It's a lot. It is a lot. I can't imagine. We even. I was so tired this weekend on the way back from Jacksonville. I pulled over to a rest stop and I was like, you know what? I just can't. I need 20 minutes. And
I know.
I parked and I just put my seat back and I was gone.
I've actually done that too. It's like I just can't drive anymore. I'm so
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah.
It's really
It's a
wearing. I
lot.
mean, it's
It
great.
is.
You're all pumped up. You want to meet the new
All those people.
homeschoolers and keep
Yeah.
in touch with the ones that have been homeschooling for a long time. But the travel has is just very
It's a lot.
tiring.
It is. It
And we
is.
got some coming up here in July again that
Yes,
I
we get a
really
couple of
look
weeks.
forward to.
We get a
But I
couple
was
of
just
weeks.
thinking this morning, oh man, another long trip for me. This time
Mm,
I'm going to wrap in some pleasure with the travel, but from Tallahassee, you've got to go at least 100 miles before you go anywhere because you have to get to Lake City and then you decide whether you're going to go south or east or even the ones in the panhandle are not so bad because you at least feel like you're heading that direction. But until you get to Lake City, heading down I-75, you just feel like you're in limbo till you get there. I don't know if you feel that way, but it's kind of strange.
sometimes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
it's what to South Florida. It's like 8 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. That one's gonna be a long, 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 long,
Yeah.
a long, long way. But we'll make it. We'll make it. It is exciting though to be there, and there's so many new faces. There's so many new. It almost makes it worth it when I just see one parent give that sigh of relief. We had a couple of parents at Edison Kids. We were at Jacksonville at Edison Kids this past weekend, and there were these three ladies, and they were together, and they were just you could tell they were overwhelmed, and they had a million questions, and one of their children was on the UA scholarship, and they were just pressed, just really really pressed and wanting help. And so as we talked to them, they were like, "Wait, we don't have to do this. we don't have to do it that way. What are you, slow down, back up and say it again, and so we went
Yeah.
through it, and it just, even just one of those just feels like it absolutely makes it worth it, that they found the information that they needed, and the look of desperation gets replaced with a look of inspiration, and you see kind of light bulbs come on, and it's that deep breath. I love that moment where the deep breath, like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like, it just makes it worth it. So
I
that
had
that
that
alone, one
conversation
parent.
with someone yesterday, and they go, "Well, we used to live in Georgia, so I don't know how the laws in Florida are, but we have to keep attendance." And I said, "No,
Mm-mm.
what? You don't have to keep it.
Yeah,
We have to be tested."
yeah,
No.
right, right.
It's just like they couldn't believe it,
Yeah,
And there was
yeah.
that same, like, "Oh, I think I can do this."
Yes, yes. Well, that there. I mean, there was more than that that happened at Edison Kids. There was a really neat couple that we met that does a pod. They do a podcast, and we got to talking about the Tell Your Story project, and going back and forth. And they seemed really excited to maybe help us get the word out for that, because that was one of the things that she wrote a book about, dispelling the homeschool myths, and how a lot of parents had kind of come to her out of the pandemic, and they were like, well, how do you do this and how do you do that, and aren't kids like this and that? And so she was like, you know what, I'm just going to write a book. So she wrote a book, and it was really interesting to.
What was the name of the book?
Why did you have to do that?
Sorry.
Now I'm embarrassed. I had it, and I put it in Crystal's purse,
Which I
and
don't
it's.
have with me. Yeah.
You don't have your purse with you? I don't
No,
have your purse
no.
with me either. Um, and wouldn't you know, with the million other things that I have in my head right now, I can't remember the exact name. But I think it was something to the effect of dispelling homeschool myths. Let me see if I can. And she said there was like 18 myths that she went through. And now I just feel really bad. Oh,
It'll come to you.
yeah, it will eventually. I owe them a link now somehow to like make up for it. So, geez, I dug myself in a hole. I'll dig myself out.
Was this the home is where the truth is, people?
Yes, thank you. Yes,
The what?
yes,
Home is where the truth is.
Oh.
They actually have a book called that. Is that the book?
yes,
Okay. It
yes,
says why you can and should homeschool your child. That's
yes. That's the one. Thank you for bailing me out. It is also available on audiobook if you need it. Now that I have rapidly Googled it. Yeah, they did a great job. And it was very interesting talking to them, Maeve Jemison and her husband, and they have wonderful kids too. Like, it was great to kind of, our kids sat with their kids, and they just hit it off right away, and it was cool to watch them dispel the myth that those children are not socialized
Right.
in real time.
What
Oh
about
man.
socialization?
No, but it's just great. There was a lot going on, and it was a really, really good event to go to.
Is
So.
the developer of this group the one that does the Legos competition over there?
They might be the one who host it. I haven't looked to see what all other events and stuff that they offer, but there was a lot of
I mean the
robotics
Edison
and
Kids
STEM.
people. They have a
Right.
competitive
Robotic.
robotics team. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was really cool. Chunky was our 4-year-old was at one of the tables, and he took the little kit that they had, and he was like, the propeller on this one doesn't spin very good. We should move it from here to there. And like, I didn't see it happen, but the guy was so impressed with the 4-year-old coming up with these ideas and like
Yeah, he told
intricately
me
looking at it.
Yeah, when I walked up, he was like, "Your son just gave me an idea for how to improve this design." I was like, "Wow, okay."
Yeah. But it was cool. They had a lot of really neat things for the kids to do and to interact with and be a part of. They had some speaking things the parents could go to and listen in on and kind of get community.
It was more science oriented than some of the other groups.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very.
it was STEM oriented. So there was um, a lot of different vendors related to that. Not every vendor was related to that, but there were definitely a lot of cool
Hmm.
hands-on things for the kids to do. Our boys spent hours playing with this marble run thing. You could build
Hmm.
the ramps for their marbles to roll down.
Yeah, they love that.
Yeah.
They love that. And, that's a great segue into today's topic, um, because a couple of times while we were there, I was able to look around, and when people were like, well, what do you guys do? Uh, and I was like, well, as it turns out, this year in legislative session, they were wanting to gut all of the equipment that you see here. All of this is electives. And none of it would be able to be purchased with the PEP scholarship if we hadn't pushed back and kept them from restricting the program. And there we are. They were like, "What? What do you? That is wow. Why would they even do that?" And they didn't really know, because they hadn't necessarily seen the podcast or
Wow.
been following along with what we were doing. So help us get the word out that we're here, so people can be informed as we go through the year. But also, it brings us into today, which is it's July 1st, Brenda, and the laws the bills that we were arguing over that were then signed and enrolled and signed into law. A lot of them go into effect today. So we can talk about what some of those are. I think it might be useful. There's a couple that we weren't following those bills, so it's news to me that
That
they
not
they were.
all legislation is proactive.
Yes, yes.
Like getting rights and privileges for parents, which we've done a lot of in the past,
Mhm.
but we've also protected them from having rights and privileges taken away. And I
Yeah,
think last year was a harder fighting the negative that it was going to affect parents that had scholarships, because a lot of times those things spill over into other things. So you just have to be so watchful to make sure that nothing that is being proposed is going to affect not only that particular group of parents, but other parents that are directing the education of their children. So, we really need parents who are connected to their legislators to let us know who they know, because just the ones that we knew were very helpful in helping us fight. But it was because many of them had connection to leadership, or were on the committees and understood the issues. But we can't be in every part of the state to know who is a friend and who's willing to help us fight to keep the laws that we have that are good, and fight to help us get better laws. So we know there's some work to be done in the upcoming session.
hmm
One of the big items that I know about is the parents want to have computers and digital devices put into the PEP program. So we need your help, those that are listening, to get to know their legislators. And of course, I harp on this all the time, getting involved in their campaigns and figuring out how they stand on home education and educating them. And by all means, letting your kids meet them, because kids really do help influence legislation. But, we've got some primaries coming up in September.
hmm
And, now's the time to get out there and earn some points with your legislators, or help them get elected so they can help us keep the laws straight. So yeah, July 1, it's time on again.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This is where what we worked for kind of gets codified, and we move on to what's next. So we can do, I guess, a quick review. I will say this: please don't spam comments with copy pasted content, especially from conversations that happen on Facebook. So it is it's it doesn't really make for what we're trying to do. If you want to ask that question on here, post the question and ask the question, but please don't spam content into the comments. So I'd appreciate that. The Do you want to dive into 1403 or HB 49, Brenda, or any of the other ones that we were kind of working on and hit the high points?
If you want to hit the high points, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I guess it's challenging to look at it and see what is there because we fought to get it out. So it's not there to pull up and see. It's kind of frustrating that all of the hard work that we put into is kind of like invisible simply because that language is no longer
Right.
there in the bill.
Well, that was not it. We were proactive in trying to get it out, but we were fighting what somebody else was trying to get in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the language that was put into 1403 was that the instructional materials, equipment used as instructional materials for the electives, were all going to be gutted. It was going to be limited back to the 4 core subjects. And man, we had to go back and forth. 1403, as it stands now, does not have that language in it, which is great. And then I think they updated some parts of the purchasing guide. They made it so that the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities, the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities,
At UCF.
At UCF, right, is going to be the one to kind of take over the creation and updating of the Unique Abilities purchasing guide. So then Step Up for Students and AAA will then kind of come along board and pass them along, but that center will be working with parents to create the guide. And I've heard some things in the background. I'm not going to share what they are, but I've heard some things in the background of some of the new approach that they have and what they're trying to do. And I think that they are still working together with Step. I know that they're working with Step Up for Students back and forth, and I know that they're working with parents. I can't speak for AAA because I don't know, but it's interesting to see. It was kind of funny because it's like now the entire working of that has been placed into the hands of academics, and it's like, they wanted to make something so customized it was gonna like bog down the process even further with reimbursements, and Step Up for Students was like, no, please no. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like all of the academics I have worked with, so hopefully it doesn't turn into a big mess, but we will just have to kind of watch, wait, and see, and speak up when we need to. So, the other thing that was interesting was there was something about. And I was looking for it.
Before you go to the next point, one of the things that we fought for and were unsuccessful was to make sure that there was a parent on that working group with UCF who had a child with each one of the disabilities, because sometimes you don't understand what needs to be done for a child unless you have one with those specific disabilities. So, but unfortunately, we weren't successful in that. We had several initiatives we were working on, but
they did add language that says must establish a process to collect input and feedback from parents, private schools, and providers before implementing substantial modifications to the reimbursement process.
But we don't know what that's going to be.
Yeah, that was as far as we could get it. So, let's see. There is more.
The purchasing guide can be updated more than just once a year.
Yes. And I'm looking for the lines for that. Let's see. There it is. I knew I would find it. Or no, I guess I didn't. This is fun. This is about enrollment. Accessibility.
While he's looking for that, Brenda, when will the latest version of these, the 2024 version of the statutes, be available on the official websites?
That's hard to tell. Usually by September, but it
I'm sure
depends.
that's something parents are going to be wondering. In the
Exactly.
meantime, you can find the PDF of the enrolled version on the Senate website. You just have to look up the bill, and then they have a link to the PDF of the final version of everything.
Yeah, the legislature does that to update those laws and make sure they're placed in the right place in the statute. And it varies. I mean, generally they're not done by July 1. So it'll probably be later in the summer, maybe even into September before they're there.
The handbook must include, at a minimum, a routinely updated list of prohibited items and services and items that require pre-authorization and additional documentation by August 1st, 2024, and by each July 1st thereafter. And on the organization fails to submit a purchasing handbook required by subparagraph 1, the Department of Education may assess a financial penalty not exceeding $10,000 as prescribed by the state board. So I think that was the change. We had a conversation about the purchasing guide, but where were we going with all of the restrictions? Were we going to reach maybe that 5 to 10 year mark where eventually we just have the entire purchasing guide added to statutes, or was it a matter of not understanding the purchasing guide or not trusting that it did what they intended for it to do because it was in statute? And so they updated the statutes to give it a little bit more teeth. If the organization fails to submit the purchasing guide handbook required by subparagraph 1, the Department of Education may assess financial penalty not to exceed $10,000 as prescribed by the State Board of Education rule. This subparagraph expires July 1st.
I think some of the key points in what you read are routinely updated. So now they have the authority to update it more frequently.
Right.
And then they have to have, like, for example, the 24 to 25 handbook that isn't out yet, they need to have out by August 1st, according to that date.
And then they also added must establish a process to collect input and feedback from parents, private schools, and providers. So
which they already had. They had that purchasing guide feedback form. Step Up had that last year.
Yes.
I don't know if AAA had something in place, but they will have to now.
Yeah, and I think that putting it in statute was like, if one is doing it but the other is not, then at least now they all have to get on the same page and get up to speed and at least do these things. So that's great that it's listed here. Anyway, those are some of the changes. Those are a couple of the changes that kind of came from HB 1403. Then there is HB 49, which was about, this is the bill for minors working and curfew for minors. So minors 16 and 17 years of age who are in a home education program or are enrolled in an approved virtual instruction program in which the minor is separated from the teacher by time only. It gives them a waiver to permit them more work hours, which is great because, home education families are not necessarily bound to the four walls within a public school. And so that system, they have more flexibility and now they can access and use it because of the curfew extension from HB 49, which goes into effect today, which is also great.
Well, that's really an advantage because homeschoolers can work during the day when public school students have to be at school. So they should be able to get opportunities with employers that they might not have been able to get before, just because of the variation in the work hours.
Right. We do have some questions. Since there's a question posted, I'll throw it to you, Brenda. It says, Brenda, can you speak to administrative law versus constitutional law? Yes, the FES PEP. It's FTC PEP, by the way, not FES. That's a different program. Yes, the FTC PEP is in the Constitution. However, administrative law through departments of education can issue legal guidance to include laptops and computers in PEP purchasing guide? I'm not sure where you want to start with that question.
Whew. I missed the part in the middle about the constitutional law. Would you repeat that again?
Sure.
Repeat the question.
So the question is, can you speak to administrative law versus constitutional law? The FTC PEP is in the Constitution. Is that correct?
No, it's not.
All right. And then, however, administrative law through departments of education can issue legal guidance to include laptops, computers, and computers in the PEP purchasing guide. Is that correct?
No. Okay. Constitutional law is really designed to explain how the governance of our state is going to be carried out.
Mhm.
So there is a mandate in the Constitution that the legislature, that the state provide a free and appropriate public education.
Mhm.
Actually, I take that back. That's an IDEA for students with disability. It's called, what is it in the Constitution?
Public education?
They changed it a couple of years ago. It's like high quality public education and other means of education, something along that line. It does not specifically say any type of program
Do you want me to read it?
created by the legislature. And they've gone back to court and fought beginning back in 1999 when they first implemented the McKay. There have been a couple of court battles on that. I'd have to refresh my memory. But to establish that the state can pay for other programs that are not public education. And so, no, that is not in the Constitution.
Right.
But it is legal. The legislature passed it and allocated money. The only time administrative law comes into effect is when the legislature has not spelled out the details of a particular piece of legislation, and it goes to the particular department that would oversee that area. So anything passed in law in the education code would go to the legislature if it's not specific enough. However, they cannot expand on what the legislature has passed. So we go back to statutory construction.
Right.
When there is a list of items given in a statute as acceptable, and it automatically eliminates other things that are not listed in that list. So digital devices would be seen by the departments, by the court, as not intended to be included because it was not specifically named. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
We talked about this last week a little bit.
Right. And we've talked about it before. But so digital devices would have to be included in the legislation coming forward for PEP parents to be able to use their money for computers.
Right.
And the state departments do not have the bureaucracy in Florida, does not have the right to expand on what the legislature passed. They can further explain it. In other words, if the legislature wanted to, they could have it so that the Department of Education controls what's in the purchasing guide. But passing administrative rules it takes a while, and it would take them probably a year or so to be able to get a list of all that stuff. It's very cumbersome. So the better thing is to keep it out of the state making rules or options and let a private entity, which controls it anyway, as far as the payment is concerned, to be able to define what can be and not can be included and what cannot be included. What they did is the most efficient way of doing it, but the only bottom line in this program to get computers is for us to go back and educate the legislators on the need of parents who are basically using virtual courses. They're approved to use virtual courses, but if they don't have a computer, then that isn't an option.
Right. And so Clive says, I'll personally take this issue to Governor DeSantis. He's from my area in Northeast Florida. He visits here a lot. He considers Northeast Florida a second home. He also says, do lab fees, which include digital devices, are they covered? And he's referring to the purchasing guide from Step Up for Students, which says under lab fees and materials, science, math, and computer lab fees and equipment and lab safety equipment may be eligible. So it's the lab fees and equipment part. But to my understanding, the answer to that is no, because the interpretation of that has to be in line with statute, and statute doesn't allow for digital devices and computers in this particular circumstance, as long as it is science and math related, and it's very, what's the word? It is like the microscopes. Some of them are digital, right? Like those are not necessarily excluded, even though they have digital components for them, because they are specifically and only for that science, or maybe even that science kit requires one to be a part of it, to be used for it. Computers, because their use is so much more broad, they don't fit the niche of just being used as digital science equipment, pertinent to that package. So it's not something that we can just flex and interpret loosely. I don't think, or we're not interpreting it that way in either way, and we don't make the judgment on that. Step Up for Students would. I do think you would find it very difficult to get any of the processors to reimburse or process any of that, because that's how they're going to read it. He says, example is a digital calculator for math considered as a digital device. Are robots digital devices? I don't know the nuance on calculators, but I would assume that they're fine, because they fit that very narrow window, right, of being very specifically for this science or math curriculum, and not the broader category of digital devices as a whole.
I think y'all need to expand, because I'm not down in the weeds of the purchasing guide. I know generally, but I know Crystal is really on top of that. If last year, AAA was not approving microscopes and things like that, if it was not specifically listed as something needed in the curriculum. Right. Step Up has a little bit broader view, because I think they understand home education better. We've done a lot of education with them over the years, but they didn't tie a purchase like that to a specific curriculum. So I don't know with the new purchasing guide how that's going to be interpreted, but yeah, I think personally, I think that they were just excluding computers because that's all they were considering digital devices. For example, I think a Peloton is a digital device.
No,
but
Peloton, when we argued about this earlier in the year, my argument was that it should be considered a digital device, but it's not.
Yeah, I think that's what Brenda was
90%
saying.
of it,
She thinks it should be. Yeah.
it should be, I think, but it's not.
Well, there are some things they've excluded, like digital art tablets, digital drawing tablets that are specifically used only for art, but they won't cover them because they're digital devices.
That's correct.
There were some VR headsets that were tied to some curriculum that was in the scholarship that they later removed, because they said it was there in error, because I guess it had been a carryover from the UA scholarship. And they hadn't, when they had updated the store, they had forgotten to remove it or something. So there were some parents who bought these VR headsets first quarter, And then second quarter, parents were trying to purchase it and were being told by Step Up, oh, the reason it's not there is because it's not an approved expense.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think there's some nuance to what they're interpreting as a digital device, but
Mm-hmm.
they have to abide by statute with how they
Right.
construct the purchasing guide. And it's clear that a laptop is a digital device. So
Mm-hmm.
there's really not going to be a way for them to bend around that one
Right.
to have laptops and tablets and things like that as
So it may take us
an
some
approved
time, but that
purchase.
is something that's on our radar, and we want to be pushing to get digital devices included.
Well, don't we kind of have some ground to stand on since one of the Tallahassee middle
Yes.
schools now has?
Yes, so that was great. I'm so glad you brought that up. I feel like I talk about this ad nauseum, but on February 22nd, we were in a committee hearing or a committee meeting with the Senate, in which case we're often hearing the rebuttal, well, why would homeschool students get this if public school students don't get that? You know, like we have to be fair and equitable. It's like, okay, I hear you, but 2 days prior, on February 20th, there was an article in the Tallahassee Democrat that talked about a Leon County middle school that was building a full-fledged gaming studio, multi-computers, not a computer lab for them to go learn word processors, but a gaming studio for them to game together and stream gaming and play Call of Duty or whatever the games are that they're going to put on those computers. You know, kids know how to get past your firewalls. You should know that by now. So they're going to get in there and they're going to play the games that they can download onto it. And then the thing that they were touting and celebrating was that these kids are excited about it, and look at this, they're excited to come to school. Isn't that awesome? And oh, by the way, now we're doing this thing where we find out what kids are passionate about, and we pour the education in through what they're passionate about. And I'm like, yeah, that's what homeschoolers have been doing for decades. Welcome to the party. But then
Yeah.
also, why are we talking about what homeschool kids can't have because public school kids don't? Does this mean that now we can go spend PEP scholarship money on gaming studios? Because the reverse logic should be true if the logic is true. Like, well, public school kids get this. Why don't homeschool kids get this? We should be able to build gaming studios for our kids with the scholarship money. If you're building them for the public school kids, like that, it just, anyway.
Yeah, very frustrating.
Very frustrating. Very frustrating.
But
Anyway.
believe me, we know that's on the radar for next
Yes.
year as part of
Yes.
what we're trying to do. So any opportunity, Clive, that you can take to talk to the governor would be most welcome.
Yeah, he says this confusion is resulting in parents incurring expenses which are not being reimbursed. I'm telling parents are absolutely furious. Why have the program if we can't use it? This is misleading parents to make expenses which aren't being reimbursed. This is maddening. I would say so. Here's a good caution to parents on this very subject. So many parents are new. We go to Edison Kids and Monticello and Jack's Teach and Pensacola, and tons and tons and tons of new families that are all looking at home education. They're all looking at homeschooling with the PEP scholarship. So they're doing parent-directed education through PEP, and they're wanting to know what they can do. My encouragement is this: be very mindful of your expenses and try not to overextend yourself. I'm not a financial planner, so I'm not going to give you financial advice, right? Like the caveat. But if you put yourself in a position where you're dependent and you're stuck, it will make it much harder for you to argue back or walk away from the scholarship as it becomes onerous or restrictive. We're going to fight for it not to, and we're going to argue and we're going to push back. But in the event that a restriction lands that you don't want to see or be a part of any further, you maintain your disposition to walk away. And if you've gotten yourself in and you're waiting for all these reimbursements back and you can't, that is going to impact your ability to stay free and clear. The other thing would be, as we see scholarship money pouring in, I'm starting to see rates go up. I'm starting to see prices increase. Be judicious. I encourage you to be judicious. You may have found that favorite program or curriculum or thing or teacher or tutor, and you really want to do that particular one. But if they're taking so much of a huge part of your scholarship because they go, hey, wow, now there's a scholarship there, we can double, triple our rates. Be mindful that there are lots of opportunities out there. There are many, many options for you to spend your scholarship funds on. And being gouged by any of them is not helpful to how far you can make that stretch. So I encourage you, if you don't like the price of something, don't buy it. Like
Well,
if go ahead.
I was just gonna add to that. Inform yourself of what the purchasing guide and the handbooks actually say also,
Yeah.
because I I see a lot of parents who are upset that something wasn't reimbursed when
Mm-hmm.
it was carefully outlined in the purchasing guide what is included for reimbursable expenses within categories and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
The purchasing guide
Yeah.
is there to be a tool for you. So please check it ahead of purchasing something to make
Yeah.
sure that what you're purchasing, whether it's a class program or an
Yes.
online virtual thing or curriculum, or there shouldn't be a reason that curriculum isn't covered because the criteria for that are very broad. But
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you're purchasing, check the purchasing guide first,
Yes.
because then you can see what things are excluded and what things are included. And if something is specifically included in the guide and as reimbursable, then
Mm-hmm.
you know that you are safe to go ahead and purchase it and submit it for reimbursement. Also, pay attention to the information that you need to have because, for example, I've purchased some books at like little pop up bookstores at a convention or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And I would have had to ask for a special receipt from them for that to be reimbursable because it didn't have enough information on the receipt for me to submit for reimbursement. So make sure that you're collecting the information you need when you purchase something to be able to submit that if you're wanting to get it reimbursed.
Yeah.
And I had something else to say on that. AAA is
Uh,
different than Step Up. Step Up's guide is very detailed
mm-hmm.
and easy to follow. What I was gonna say is I see a lot of people in Facebook groups. Lately, it's kind of made me sad because I see people who are coming into Facebook groups basically new and scrolling through
Mm-hmm.
the whole last year of posts and then saying, "Never mind, I was awarded, but I'm declining the scholarship because it looks like no one is able to get reimbursed and it's just a
Yeah.
mess."
Right.
And then I'm so grateful for the parents who jump on those posts and chime in with with these type of comments, which is remember that the people who post the most often are the ones who are having an issue. So when you come into a
Mm-hmm.
group like that and you see all these posts of people having problems, what you're not seeing is the posts of all the people who got their stuff reimbursed without any
Mm-hmm.
issues.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and then for not every case, but for the majority of cases where the reimbursements have been denied or put on hold and requested additional documentation, it's because there really was some kind of documentation missing. Again, not every case, because when the processors are just training, they were kicking back some stuff that had the information there that they just didn't see it. I'm not talking about those cases. But
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to parents who are frustrated because something keeps getting denied and keeps getting denied and keeps getting denied. And then when we look more closely at it for them, we're like, oh, it's because this isn't there.
Yeah.
So please check the handbook, check the purchasing guide. You will make your life so much easier if you're checking ahead of time what is reimbursable and then making sure that when you submit your reimbursements that you have all the required information included. It will just make everyone's life easier.
Yeah, and I would add to that as the final round, page 3 of the purchasing guide and the general purchasing provisions. Please read the guide. It's going to answer a lot of questions, and it'll be really useful as your Bible to what you can buy or what you can use it for. But there are things called pre-authorizations, and it mentions pre-authorizations about 9 times in the entire purchasing guide. If you have a question about whether or not this could be covered or might be, submit a pre-authorization and see, right? Pre-authorizations are there to help you with understanding that prior to spending and getting yourself in a hole on something. So,
Yeah, we were told not to submit pre-authorizations for things that are already clearly covered by what's already in the guide. But yeah,
True.
if you're sort of in a gray area and you're not sure if something is covered because it's not specifically stated in the guide, that's what that
Yep.
pre-authorization is for.
100%. And that will help. I think that will help in a lot of ways. I've also been talking with Step Up for Students about some proactive measures that they could be taking on their communication end, where they could be communicating some of the expectations across more clearly with parents and helping them understand what some of those core issues are that they keep running into in ways that might even dial back some of the phone lines being bogged down with easy to answer questions. So hopefully they'll that will help. And I think that a lot of these kind of questions like this will go a long way. We also have to kind of read the guide, read the purchasing guide, and know what's in it. Especially since our legislators are not. It was very very clear to me during session as we were arguing that they didn't know that you already couldn't buy a horse, and they didn't know that you already couldn't pave your driveway or buy a car for driver's ed. They thought these are things parents are going to go try to get reimbursed, and parents will be very sad if they go and buy a car and then realize they can't get it reimbursed because they can't get it reimbursed, or the
Or
horse.
can't pay for it.
Yeah, and then they're really upset. But I thought we could. Yeah, so do the due diligence, especially the due diligence that I really want to embarrass our legislators, but because I think that's a black eye they deserve. But I don't want to go too hard on it because I want to build bridges.
Well,
I hope we're going
it's
to be
kind
working
of
on solutions moving forward.
the purchasing guide is kind of hidden in the website unless you're in one of the programs. So,
It's pretty
let me
easy to
just
find
say,
now.
huh?
I said it's pretty easy to find now. I think they moved it. I
Good,
think they moved it because it's pretty front and
prominent,
center.
good,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it was not before. So I'm gonna give them a little credit there.
yeah.
But the other thing is, you have to remember legislators are on 8 to 10 committees, and
Right.
each one of these issues that comes up has a great deal of detail, and they have to consider a lot of different laws in trying to come forward with a new law. And yes, they do have staff, but still a legislator can't know all of the issues. That's why our audience is so important. And that's why we need them to contact legislators before they get to Tallahassee about some of these things. And I wanted to point out because this is an election year, they won't be sworn in until the second Tuesday of November, I think is the date.
Mhm.
It's early November. And then there will be committee meetings, and we'll have opportunities, hopefully, to talk about some of these things if they have committee meetings prior to the session. But this year, the session should begin on the first Tuesday of March of next year. And so, second Tuesday, first Tuesday, I get those kind of mixed up. But anyway, won't begin until March and ends in May. So nobody can anticipate a computer being approved unless they were to take it up
Correct.
early in the session and pass a bill, which they have done before, and it's gone to the governor's office right off the bat, even during committee meetings. But that's not normal. And I doubt they're going to do that for just adding computers, digital devices to this bill. So we have a lot of time to educate the legislators, the new ones, and some of the other ones that will have been there for a while. It will be helpful if they're on committee meetings. It will be very helpful if they're in leadership. And we have new leadership coming in the House. Danny Perez from Miami, and Ben Albritton in the Senate. And that will be helpful that we let them know what those issues are so they can be putting that into their items of a priority early on. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we also need our followers out there to be educating them about the scholarship so they don't come to Tallahassee with a misunderstanding of how this
Correct.
money can be spent.
Yeah, absolutely. Clive says, let's see here. He's responded again. You guys are missing the frustration of parents who are abandoning the program. This will continue, and I don't blame the parents. The situation isn't funny, and parents' frustrations shouldn't be minimized. Please stop belittling parents. Stop being condescending. Let's be more understanding. Thanks, Brenda. My legislators, where is he? My legislators will be hearing about the issues of this program. Can the issue be addressed through education executive order by Governor DeSantis? So I want to address that a little bit. We're not being condescending. There are some very real important issues that we need parents to educate themselves on. And when parents are upset that it's not working the way that they thought it would work, we have two things that we have to look at. One, were they informed about the program and did they actually understand how it would work? That's where we say review the purchasing guide. Please read it thoroughly. Please use it like your Bible. Read through it and figure out. Use the pre-authorization part of it. Right there at the very beginning of the purchasing guide, it states that parents can seek pre-authorization for some of these purchases they don't know about. So if you're stuck in a place where it's very, very frustrating, we have to look at that as one of the only movable pieces is, did you know, right? And then the other part is, does the legislation or the purchasing guide need to be updated in a way that's consistent and read by legislators consistently? And those are other parts that we can advocate and lobby for. But if parents are upside down because they didn't understand it, that's not something we can simply go change for them. And like Brenda said, it will take time. Even now, if we say, oh, we're working on digital devices. Okay, great. Let's go get digital devices because that's what they're going to be working on. You'll be upside down on digital devices depending on how long it's going to take for us to get agreement and get the bill sponsored and then the bill passed with the right language and voted on, and it doesn't retroactively cover those purchases
Right.
that
So
you
it'll
made from
be
the
July
previous
1
year.
next year before it actually goes into effect.
Into effect,
Right.
correct. And
Yeah,
then
the
purchases
legislation.
made the year prior to that are not eligible for that reimbursement. You can't go backwards and say, oh, I bought a computer a year and a half ago, and now computers are covered, reimburse it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and this is
So,
something that I've been explaining to parents as well, is the statutes that affect this school year have already been set. So we're
mhm,
aiming for the 25-26 school year for the changes to be in effect that we're wanting to see.
mhm,
Because for 24-25, that was this past legislative session. I
mhm,
also want to address this other comment of Clive's. He said, this is another area of frustration. Step Up outsourced the reimbursement to India to review reimbursements and approval. India is on the British education system. They have no knowledge of US education system. This reimbursement process is very nuanced. Parents aren't lawyers. So I just want to say that Step Up's customer service is outsourced. I don't know that they're in India, but it is a third-party service. Their processors, from what I understood, are actual employees, but even if they're not, even if they've outsourced that part of it, the processors still have to follow the purchasing guide and the handbook
mhm,
in how they approve and review reimbursements. So whether they're actually in the US or not, they are still using the same standards for reviewing and approving reimbursements because they have to abide by the purchasing guide. So,
mhm,
yes, there are some human error that occur or some misunderstandings, and I've seen them ask for additional documentation for things that were in fact already there on what the parent submitted. Those things will
yep,
happen.
yep,
My best advice to you if you're running into a situation like that is be as clear as possible with what you submit. When I submit, I've never had a reimbursement denied at all. And I know plenty of people who haven't. I've had them put on hold and additional documentation requested.
mhm,
But I think part of why some parents are not having issues with reimbursements is because they're trying to be as clear as possible with what they submit. I will literally write notes explaining if I think something might be unclear, like if I'm submitting a receipt that includes more than just the thing I'm asking for reimbursement for or something like that, I will
mhm,
put a note on the actual receipt, on the image I send in, explaining with a circle around the part I'm reimbursing and explaining what exactly that is. I try to make the room for error almost non-existent because I
Mm-hmm.
know that human error does exist. And then if you have a recurring reimbursement, like a class or tutoring that you submit on a monthly basis or whatever, one tip I can suggest is include the previously approved reimbursement numbers on a note with the new one you submit,
Yeah, sure.
because that helps you to avoid if you get a processor who just hasn't approved that type of thing before and they kick it back, if they can see the ones that were previously approved, that has helped some parents that were running into the issue where sometimes this is approved and sometimes it's not what's going on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not saying the process is perfect. You will get human error, you
Nope.
will get processors who don't understand. But the more information, the more clarity you can give them when you submit, you're not going to run into an issue with it being processed correctly. So,
And
Mm-hmm.
let me right here give kudos to Crystal and
Mm-hmm.
Jason. Mostly Crystal has handled these issues for us, but we've gone to bat for individual parents when they followed the purchasing guide and they're not getting reimbursed. And Crystal and Jason we've reached out to the person that we have contact with at Step Up, and they look individually at those particular items and they try to deal with that for that individual. So just throwing cold water on Step Up and saying they haven't done a good job, you have to, and I'm not in any way saying that they haven't made errors and they haven't had problems. They know they have, but with this new Emma system that they implemented 1 year ago, there have been so many problems with that system. And Jason has worked with them in trying to help point out where the problem is, how they can
Mm-hmm.
fix it. And uh, we become good friends with the person that's over the PEP program
Yeah.
because we've had weekly calls with them for months
Almost a
trying to
year.
get the
Yeah.
system working. And I know that parents are frustrated
Mm-hmm.
and some of them don't have the time to deal with the reimbursements, and I get that. We're not in
Yeah.
any way saying that it's not legitimate, but we
Mm-hmm.
are saying that if you want the extra money that you're going to be given, then you're going to have to be patient in trying to help us help you and Step Up help you, because I think it's going to be better this year. There are not so many new
Mm-hmm.
things, but literally, this program was passed and thrown on Step Up. At the same time, they expanded the EO scholarships, the Educational Opportunity Scholarships, making them universal in the state of Florida so that any
Mm-hmm.
child who wanted to go to a private school was eligible. And Step Up had to gear up for all of those additional students. They have to be run through the DOE databases, to make sure they're not enrolled in two different schools. They also run all of the PEP students through to make sure they're not enrolled in a
Mm-hmm.
private school or enrolled in a public school before they award the money to them. So there are lots of steps in this process before the money can actually get to the student. So Step Up's processes are part of it. They hired 200 new processors in the month of July, and then they had to be trained. So, and initially,
Mm-hmm.
one parent would get approval for one item, and another parent would get denied the same item because it's hard to get consistency when you have 200 new people.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's frustrating, and I am really sorry for the parents because I know that many of them jumped into this and began homeschooling or were already homeschooling, jumping into this. And
Yep.
they saw a wave of money coming, and oh, yeah, great, I
Mm-hmm.
can get all these things I couldn't afford before. But the rules were there, and everybody has to follow the laws. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why educating yourself ahead of time and making sure that what you purchase is in the guide, but also understanding that it's not magic. When you implement a new law, there are districts that don't understand their responsibility.
Yes.
We've got some of those happening where
Yes, we
they
do.
won't record the volunteer hours for students in their district.
That's
We're
correct.
trying to work through some of those things, but there are multiple people involved, and it's very hard to get always to the source of it overnight. So we're not in any way saying that parents haven't been frustrated or have a reason to be frustrated.
Right.
We're also realistic in understanding that this has multiple moving parts to it, and they will get it right, but we've got to get. And in fact, Step Up has a new, is it CEO,
Yeah.
who
Gretchen.
came out of a bank,
She's fantastic.
Barclay Bank, and she was, I think she handled, you helped me, Jason, I missed that call, but I think she was over the processes of like their debit cards and stuff like that. So she's well aware of all those issues.
Yeah,
And the
she's a
people that were
systems
running
person,
it
so
before were all educators. So
right. Yeah, no, she's a systems person, and efficiency and fluidity are two of her that just kind of priorities as how she sees them to make the system more effective and more efficient. And
and
I
she
very
just
much
came on
appreciate it.
board, what, July 1,
No, but I
June 1?
believe June, maybe June, maybe it was June, or yeah, she's about within 30 days, and they also hired a couple of other people directly working with her on that team, similarly veined and focused, and with the same similar skill sets. And so she, I can describe her this way because she described herself this way, but she's a self-proclaimed nerd, and this is kind of her. It's her niche. It's what she loves. It's what she's good at. She never really saw herself being at this level with it, but she's excited for it. So, and we're excited to see her. It was really interesting being on the call with her. And I will say this, that the very moment that I mentioned one of the ideas that I had, she kind of went around to the different community leaders and asked. The very moment that I mentioned one of the ideas that I had about ways to improve their proactive communication, she jumped on it, put her 2 or 3 of her team
Communications.
people on it. Yep, her communications people on it, and we had a meeting within the week to kind of dive into some of those things, and they were very receptive to the ideas and understanding what some of the issues were and how to go about them. And immediately, like I mean immediately, we saw communication start to go out with information in regards to stuff that I had given them on. They're not really speaking to core fears parents have, and issues, and being transparent and proactive, and
Yeah,
like
right away
immediately
in
started.
the PEP open house included a lot of
Hmm.
clarification on whether you have to submit your standardized test even if you're not renewing PEP.
Hmm.
They broke it down for like if you switched partway through the year out of PEP, what you have to
Hmm.
do. If you finish this year PEP but you're not renewing, what you have to do. Like they really clarified.
Hmm.
And then they also clarified the when to unenroll from another method of schooling. They
Hmm.
specifically stated in the open house once you are awarded. So that again, those are two of the top questions. I was going to say arguments because there are ongoing discussions on Facebook where I keep having to pop in and be like, actually, when I
Yeah,
see
yeah,
parents posting information.
right.
But Step Up was very clear on both of those in the open house. So if you missed the PEP open house, see if you can find someone who has the recording link to that. I don't know if they have them up available on their website or anything, but usually when you register for the upcoming one, they have some links for you to view the past one. So, uh, but it was all that information was there and much more clear than they've been in the past with that
Hmm.
type of information. So I do think they're
Yeah.
working to improve the communication. Um,
Hmm.
I'm excited about that because it's needed, and I also sent we have to our contact in the legal department. I sent some specific cases I knew of where the customer service had given parents absolutely incorrect information. So I'm hopeful that they're going to be doing some additional training to try to fix those issues as well. It's very frustrating to me
Hmm.
and to everybody
Certainly.
that you can't rely on what customer service tells you. That shouldn't
Yeah.
be the
Right.
case. So,
No, it should
So,
not be the case.
Crystal, do those notices go out to parents who have either requested a scholarship or already have a scholarship? How do they get those communications from Step Up?
I believe that the PEP open house alerts go out to everybody who's been awarded PEP. I don't know if they also go out to those who have applied but not yet been awarded. Um, Let me see if they have anything public facing on their website where I'll check really quick. Mhm. But it's definitely a helpful tool, and I was pleasantly surprised because previously the information at most of the open houses was so generic that it was almost just not helpful. But this time
Hmm.
it was a lot more specific and clear.
Well, I think working with the Home Education Foundation and the two of you who are so deeply entrenched in this and getting parents' feedback
Hmm.
to the right people at Step Up has been a tremendous help to them because they don't know what issues parents are struggling with. Uh, and and I think it's going to be a good partnership going forward to help get more information out to parents.
Certainly. Certainly. I think it's important. I think we're at 1 o'clock, so I'll be mindful of people's time, and we'll wrap up here shortly. I do think that it's really important for people to kind of understand. We see the frustrations from parents, and we apply ourselves to working them out for them. We connect them with parents with leadership within Step Up to help resolve issues that are outstanding. We advocate for them. We help impress that these are important issues, whether there's glitches or not. We do try to help seek resolution for them, and we push for lobbying to expand the rights the parents have. They should be able to, like the way that the scholarship is interpreted by the legislators to be like, oh, well, public school kids don't get this. Why should homeschool kids get it? Well, homeschooling is different. On its face, I think that should be obvious. And so we're constantly having to remind them that this is the freedom way of directing your kids' education. You know, the way that a parent directs the education in all of the ways that are free. And then we go and advocate and we go to bat whenever FHSAA or the athletic directors at a new high school are not wanting to participate with PEP students or home education students. And we see the frustration that parents have, and we work really hard to help them. So
Let me just sorry, were you done with that thought?
yeah, almost.
Okay.
I think it's really important though that we need to know sometimes whether that frustration, and I hesitate to even say this, but comes from a sense of entitlement and maybe from a lack of knowledge sometimes, because we do also get a lot of issues, a lot, where the parents just didn't put all the information on it or didn't use the right student number, or there, and I'm not blaming all parents, but there are a lot of times where we spin our wheels hours on end, and as it turns out, the parent didn't read that page of the book or didn't put this information on, and it's like, okay, cool, well, at least we were able to help you find that, and they put the information in that was needed, and they resolve it on their own, and that's fine. I'm not trying to gaslight or say all parents do this or anything like that, and no, parents don't need to be lawyers, but they need to be aware of what the guide is. This is a massive scholarship. It's up to $8,000 per child for PEP, and I think that it's your due diligence, all of the parents' due diligence, to inform themselves. It's not like ordering from McDonald's. I go up and grab a number one and I'm out the door. There's nuance to it, and there's a lot. There's a lot that's at stake for a lot of parents all across Florida, and how the money is spent, how it's accurately spent, and whether we're all trying to, work within the framework and then do the right thing by expanding the framework if it doesn't work for what we're trying to do with it, and work with legislators to go through the right channels and argue correctly to change the law and update it effectively. So just please understand that where we come from. And I know that it's hard because you don't see the day to day and everything that we end up dealing with. And so when we come and we give the highlight reel or the updated information, it may seem like we're being difficult, maybe, or not considering the frustrations that parents have. We see all of it. What were you going to say?
I just wanted to circle back to the open house thing. But first, really quick, let me say I know not everybody who is following this might be using Step Up for Students. So I apologize
Right.
if you are with AAA. I do not have any information about any communications AAA is sending out. They aren't
Mm-hmm.
as public facing with what they do, so I'm really not sure. But the only public facing way that I was able to find for you to get the links to the open houses are on Step Up's Facebook page. If you go to their Facebook page, there is a separate open house for UA, EO, and PEP. They each have their own like Zoom event that's a recurring event. And I went to Step Up's Facebook page in the search bar for their page specifically. I just typed open house, and the previous post with all those links popped up. So again, it was a separate post for EO, UA, and PEP. Each had a separate post with its own link. So be careful. Make sure you're finding the right one. That's the one that you need. But if you're looking for those open houses, you can find them via Step Up's Facebook page. And if you click on one of those that has the link from the previous, I believe it's a recurring event where you should be able to go ahead and register for the future ones from that same link. So.
Absolutely. Jane says, I have passed this on to 4 families. It's so important seeing where home education came from in the 80s. Thank you. Strength in numbers, question mark. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. There was a couple of more things I wanted to get that we were launching on July 1st. I will say this. If you have any gender reveal parties or giant balloon things to let go, I would hold off on that because there is a new law that makes that illegal and something you can be fined for even if you're 7 years old. So if you haven't brushed up on that law, make sure you go read up on some of those that are coming. And then also, sad but true, if there is a bear in Florida messing with your property, you are now allowed to put it out of your misery, so to speak. It's like a stand your ground thing, but they've expanded it to include damage to property, not just endangering humans. So it's a little sad to see that one, but I get it, and I don't, and I did, and then I get it, and then I don't. I'm just hopeful that no one abuses that. So, anywho, there's lots to come, and there's more. There's plenty more. Next week will be our 1-year anniversary of the podcast, so maybe we'll have something special planned. But until then, I'm gonna let you guys go. It's 1:00 on Monday, and we've had you for over an hour. So we thank you for your time. We thank you for your attention. We appreciate all of those of you who help us share. As we're closing things out, I do want to do what we usually do when we end these and say thank you to our top sponsors. We very much appreciate our title sponsor coming on, which is Arete. And then FPEA has been with us for the last year and as a top sponsor. And then Fisher Precious Metals has come on as a top sponsor as well. If you know of anybody out there who is a larger company and they're looking for, a place to either allow their employees through whatever employee programs they have to donate into a cause that they care about. Ours does have a 501c3 attached to it, and all you have to do is connect them with me, Jason, at flhef.org, and I can help walk them through whatever is needed for that. But we appreciate all of our viewers, all of our family sponsors as well, and our top sponsors. And with that, we will see you all next week.